Hello, my name is Elle from the Mage system. Sorry I look like Draco Malfoy today. Actually, I'm not sorry. I would probably do anything to look like Draco Malfoy. That will never actually realistically happen. I filmed an entire really good 30-minute video yesterday, and then I accidentally deleted all the footage. If you've never experienced that, it's like one of the most painful feelings. It hurts really bad. So I thought I'd just, in this 20 minutes I have, film something. So this is things that I thought invalidated my DID too. If you didn't know, it's a symptom of It's a symptom of DID to think that you're faking your DID because you're supposed to be like the one as a host going out and having a happy childhood while the others are dealing with all your shit you've got back there, your big dark abyss in the back of your head. You're supposed to think it wasn't that bad. You're supposed to think that you're faking. That's how you function as a human. So it's just kind of a thing that I don't think will ever go away for me, personally at least. But I thought making videos like this would validate other people to be like, hey, this reason of thinking that you have DID is not really that special or means that you're faking at all. And the first one that I wanted to talk about is probably one of the biggest ones is the fact that I have a bunch of other co-occurring mental disorders. I am autistic, I have a bit of ADHD as well, I have OCD for sure, depersonalization, derealization disorder, anxiety, obviously. I've experienced a lot of depression, maybe even some bipolar tendencies, and that all sounds insane, and I get very insecure about it because I'm like, there's no way people are going to believe me about any of this shit because I already have so many fucking diagnoses on my plate that it doesn't make any sense. But the truth of the matter is that if I am autistic, which autism is commonly comorbid with ADHD, we know those guys are just friends, they often just come into a person together. If you have autism, your window of tolerance of how much trauma you can take might be a lot lower. So actually you have a lot of DID systems that do have autism. It's really not an uncommon thing at all. And then in terms of all of the other diagnoses, if you have complex trauma to the point where you have DID, chances are you're going to have other diagnoses as well. Chances are that your complex trauma is going to cause you to have other diagnoses like depression, anxiety, OCD even. Bipolar can also be at times caused by trauma, borderline personality disorder. The chances are is that you're going to have at least some of these diagnoses or one of these diagnoses if you have complex trauma. That's just kind of how it works. So basically, my autism is probably at the root of all of it, the reason why whenever you mix that with complex trauma, you just get a lot of shit. And then the second thing, and this is probably actually the biggest reason why I was like, no, you don't have DID, is because of my OCD. So I have, since I was 14, experienced, well, I don't experience it so bad anymore. In fact, I think I don't fit the criteria for OCD anymore, but all throughout most of my teenagerhood was just me lying in bed trying to figure out if I was real or not. Yeah, I was essentially way too focused on my existential corporeality and philosophy and was just obsessing about it to a not good degree, to the point where I wanted to unalive. My brain likes to make up this theory sometimes that I have just my OCD, and I know I feel good right now, but my OCD, it's actually just that my OCD has gotten so out of hand that I have convinced myself that I have DID. And here's what I have to say to that, is that would be a compulsion, right? Creating DID in your head, that would be a compulsion. Compulsions aren't fun. And I am in no way saying that DID is fun by any means. There are parts of it that suck really, really hard, and then there are parts of it that are kind of okay and kind of even nice sometimes, having someone there for you. But what I guess I am trying to say is that it comes naturally, it's just there. I don't have to force it to be there you have to force your OCD compulsion actions. It's just there, and it's not something that I'm actively gotta go have DID again today, you know what I mean? That's not really how it works. It's just kind of there whether I like it or not. That's not how compulsions work. No person with OCD enjoys turning their light switch on and off. They're just like, oh, fuck, I have to fucking do this. Like, that's what it feels like. It's like, I don't want to, but I have to. I didn't choose to create DID. It was just there, and it's going to be there whether I like it or not. And the next thing is that me and my alters tend to get along pretty well. Now, let's not talk about the whole dark abyss and the tunnels and the back rooms and shit like that. We don't have to talk about that. But in terms of, like, the alters that exist on the plane that I live in, we get along pretty well. Like, me, Max, and Ginger are kind of like just a trio in a way. Like, we get along super well. In fact, I, like, spend a good portion of my day just chatting with them. And I've experienced quite a bit of, like, even things from mental health professionals being like, well, typically people with DID, like, their alters hate each other and they black out all the time. And if you don't have it like that, yeah, maybe you're making it up. Like, even professionals will do that because I can get along with my alters sometimes. And that's just super misinformed because that's not how it works. In fact, some alters are created with the sole purpose of being there for you and comforting you. That's like the whole thing of what a caretaker is if you're having a flashback or something, they'll be there comforting you. So why couldn't you have alters to where maybe it's not their primary purpose, but it's also a function of theirs to just, ooh, I almost fucking fell, to just be there with you, you know? Because I was alone a lot as a kid. So I don't think that invalidates me by any means. And also, when professionals say that, they're missing the entire other things I got back there that I don't talk about or know very much about at all, but they seem to be quite debilitating. Got that fucking Apex Legends monster. The next one is that we do things in similar ways sometimes, me and my alters. And this is funny, because I got this, like, I thought about this last night. I was not hungry, but Max was like, we gotta eat something, bro. So he went in the kitchen, and he was, like, struggling to make a couple PB&Js. And I was like, dude, he puts just as much jelly on it as I do. We both put insane amounts of jelly. Like, way too much jelly. And I was like, man, reason number 1,000 why I'm faking dies, we both put too much jelly on us. Like, but that happens a lot with various things. Like, sometimes we'll do something a little too similar, and it's reason number 1,000 why I'm faking. But let me tell you something. I know these are different people in our heads, but it's still our head, and there are varying levels of similarities in which alters can have, and in fact, they can develop more similarities over time as they start growing closer, and more parts of them kind of integrate into each other, and you guys just become more functional. You might start having more similarities, like you start liking more of the same kinds of music, or you start putting jelly on your sandwiches the same way. Point being that you putting as much jelly on your sandwich as the next guy does not mean that you're faking DID. Glad I could be there to tell you that. Next thing is, there's this thing that happens whenever I've switched out of an alter or something, and my voice hasn't quite caught up to that it's me yet. So, like, I'll talk to, like parts of their voice will kind of slip through into my voice, and I think that's also due to the fact that, like, because the switch was recent, they're still kind of around, so their passive influence is still kind of affecting their voice. Like, I don't want to do a shitty impression of Sam right now, because I know I will not do a very good job, but, like, sometimes when he switches out, like, you can still kind of hear, like, his voice and my voice a little bit, and, but it's, like, not even like him, because it's still, like, my shitty voice trying to, like, struggle to accommodate to his voice, or vice versa, or something, or it's just some weird clusterfuck, and so it just sounds, like, awkward, because my voice, like, oftentimes I just kind of sound like Morty from Rick and Morty, and then Max sounds like a normal human, and so I just sound like this kind of, like, very anxious child trying to do an impression of a real man. Okay, and then the last thing that I wanted to talk about that makes me think that I don't have DID, but is not true. I mean, it is objectively true that this happens sometimes, but is not true that it means that I don't have DID. Also, sorry about the lighting. Is that sometimes whenever an alter is outside of your body doing something, you say I. like, Max made a PB&J last night, and if I was telling somebody about that, I might say, yeah, I was making a PB&J last night, even though I am not Max. This happens sometimes because, imagine this, you've gone through your whole life pretending like you don't have DID, so you say I when you instead mean somebody else, and so sometimes you still say I. It's pretty hard to just not do that sometimes, you know? And also, if you are watching your body doing something that you are in agreement with, like you're watching an alter play a game or something, and you're there watching and you're cheering them on or whatever, and like when they make a decision, you're all behind it, you're like, yeah, but you're watching it from your first person perspective. It kind of almost feels like you're doing it, or like your team is doing it, you know what I mean? Or if, like, I'm in full agreement with Max in the kitchen making a PB&J and I'm watching him do it, I'm like, yeah, man, put some peanut butter on that. That looks good. Like, I might get a tendency to say, like, oh, yeah, I was making that PB&J because I was watching him do it and I was in full agreement with what he was doing it, so it kind of almost in a way feels like me. Does that make sense? But it's not me. It was we. We made a PB&J, you know? But we've gone through our whole lives calling ourselves I to protect ourselves from people realizing we're different. So it's only natural that you're going to use I sometimes, especially with like people who you're not really comfortable with talking about your system. Like maybe they know, but you're not like, ah, yeah, Max was making a sandwich. Like, why did I switch? Why did I go into like an Australian accent? Anyways, I think that just about covers it. I mean, there's obviously more reasons why I thought I was faking, but like that's it for the second part. Thank you for watching video. I appreciate you. See you later.